Imagine it's 1997. The television landscape belongs to Gene Roddenberry's optimistic vision of the future. Star Trek dominates science fiction with its promise that humanity will overcome its petty differences and explore the stars in peace. Babylon 5 offers complex politics, but still maintains hope for galactic cooperation. And most sci-fi treats alien contact as either pure adventure or pure horror, but locked away in Gene Roddenberry's personal vault since his death in 1991 lay something different, something darker. Notes scribbled on napkins and receipts that outlined a vision completely opposite to everything Star Trek represented. What if aliens came to us? What if they offered paradise and we accepted? What if humanity's greatest salvation became its most subtle enslavement? Majel Barrett Roddenberry was determined to bring her late husband's final vision to life.
That's where I have to be.
Working with scattered concepts and fragmentary notes, she would create Earth Final Conflict. A show that dared to ask whether progress always means freedom, whether benevolence might mask desperation, and whether humanity's greatest test wouldn't come from exploring the stars, but from welcoming strangers to Earth. This wasn't Star Trek's bright future. This was something far more dangerous, a mirror image that reflected our darkest fears about trust, cooperation, and the price of utopia. For 5 tumultuous seasons, Earth Final Conflict would prove that even Gene Roddenberry's genius had shadows. And sometimes the most interesting stories emerge from those shadows. This is the story of science fiction's most troubled masterpiece. The most remarkable thing about Earth Final Conflict wasn't that it succeeded despite constant chaos. It was that it existed at all, emerging from what amounted to creative archaeology. When Gene Roddenberry died in 1991, he left behind boxes of notes, sketches, and concepts scribbled on everything from napkins to restaurant receipts. Among these fragments was something called Battleground Earth, a vision that turned everything Star Trek represented completely upside down. Where Trek showed humanity boldly going into space, this would trap humanity on Earth. Where Trek presented optimistic cooperation between species, this would explore the horror of dependency. Where Trek's aliens were either friends or enemies, these would be something far more dangerous, desperate refugees who needed humanity more than humanity needed them. Paul Gertz, head writer on the series, would later reveal the shocking truth: Roddenberry's actual involvement was minimal, just a premise written on a napkin. Everything else came from Majel Barrett Roddenberry's interpretation of scattered notes and her determination to honor her husband's darker impulses. The concept was revolutionary for 1990s television. The Talons, beautiful, androgynous aliens called companions, arrive offering humanity gifts beyond imagination. Disease eliminated, war ended, pollution solved, paradise achieved in just 3 years. But paradise, the show suggested, might be the most sophisticated form of imprisonment ever devised. Unlike typical invasion stories, the Talons didn't conquer through force. They conquered through gratitude. They made themselves indispensable, then slowly revealed their true desperation. They weren't evil overlords seeking domination. They were a dying species manipulating humanity's survival to ensure their own. This moral complexity was unprecedented in syndicated science fiction. Heroes could be wrong, villains could be sympathetic. And sometimes, the greatest threat to freedom came wrapped in the promise of progress. Earth Final Conflict would prove that the most dangerous alien invasion wasn't an attack. It was a rescue. The casting of Earth Final Conflict reflected its fundamental challenge: finding actors who could navigate a morally complex universe where heroes and villains changed depending on perspective, while surviving one of television's most chaotic production environments. Kevin Kilner anchored the first season as William Boone, and his casting established everything the show aspired to be. This wasn't your typical sci-fi hero. Boone was a police captain caught between worlds, serving as bodyguard to the aliens while secretly working for the human resistance. Kilner brought gravitas to this impossible position, portraying a man genuinely torn between duty and suspicion. What made Kilner's performance remarkable was his refusal to play Boone as either pure hero or obvious spy. Every scene crackled with internal conflict as he smiled at his Talon charges while gathering intelligence that might doom them. This was sophisticated character work that elevated typical sci-fi drama into genuine psychological complexity. But Kilner's departure after Season 1 became the show's defining catastrophe. Contract disputes and creative disagreements led to his shocking exit, and Kevin Kilner learned about his character's death not from producers, but from a friend who'd seen casting breakdowns for his replacement. The final episode was hastily reshot, digitally adding the Talon Zoar to disintegrate Boone's body. This wasn't creative planning. This was damage control. Robert Leeshock replaced Kilner as Liam Kincaid, and the character's origin became everything wrong with later seasons. Liam was half alien, half human, born from a mystical encounter and aged to adulthood in days. Fans dubbed him Space Jesus Super Baby, and the description wasn't entirely unfair. Leeshock did his best with material that asked him to be wise beyond his years while maintaining human relatability. But the character's ridiculous backstory undermined every scene. The constant recasting reached its peak when Jane Heitmeyer's Renee Palmer transitioned from supporting character to series lead in Season 5. Heitmeyer had originated Renee as a business liaison in Season 3, playing her as competent but secondary. Suddenly asked to carry the entire show, she faced an impossible task, anchoring a series not designed around her character while fighting alien vampires in what critics mockingly called Renee the Vampire Slayer. The true stars were the Talon performers. Lenny Parker as Da'an brought ethereal beauty to the role of the benevolent North American companion, while Anita La Selva's Zoar radiated ambitious menace as the ruthless UN companion. These actors had to convey alien psychology through human performance, making beings that were neither good nor evil, but desperately, recognizably, survival-driven. Parker and La Selva understood that the Talons weren't monsters. They were refugees. Their performances carried the show's philosophical weight, making the aliens sympathetic even when their actions were manipulative. They represented the moral complexity that made early seasons work. The supporting cast, Von Flores as the conflicted Sandoval, Richard Chevolo as Hacker Augur, Lisa Howard as pilot Lily Marquette, provided stability amid the chaos, though they too fell victim to budget cuts and creative upheaval. This wasn't just a cast facing typical television pressures. They were navigating a production that seemed determined to replace them at every opportunity. Yet somehow, they created performances that made Earth Final Conflict's vision of moral ambiguity feel genuinely human. The reception of Earth Final Conflict tells the story of a series that began as science fiction's most promising new drama and gradually became a cautionary tale about how behind-the-scenes chaos can destroy even the most brilliant concepts. From its October 1997 premiere, the series garnered impressive critical praise for syndicated television. Critics recognized something special. This wasn't typical alien invasion fare, but sophisticated political allegory wrapped in science fiction. The show's exploration of collaboration versus resistance, security versus freedom, and progress versus independence felt remarkably prescient for the late 1990s. Initial ratings were strong, particularly in international markets, where the moral complexity resonated with audiences already skeptical of American-led globalization. The series found success in Canada, Europe, and other regions where viewers appreciated stories questioning whether benevolent intervention might mask ulterior motives. But the cracks appeared almost immediately. Season 2's radical transformation, killing off Kevin Kilner's beloved character and replacing him with Robert Leeshock's mystical hybrid, triggered massive fan backlash. Online communities that had praised the show's sophisticated storytelling suddenly found themselves defending a series that seemed to have lost its way. The introduction of Liam Kincaid felt like creative panic rather than planned evolution. Hardcore fans wrote angry letters to Tribune Entertainment and Majel Barrett Roddenberry, complaining about the poor writing and apparent lack of clear direction. Many who had embraced the show's initial moral complexity felt betrayed by the shift toward more conventional action-adventure storytelling. The producer's decision to bow to financier pressure for more sex and violence alienated viewers who had appreciated the show's intellectual approach. The cast changes became a running joke among science fiction fans. Where other series built audience attachment through consistent characters, Earth Final Conflict seemed determined to replace its leads every season. Each departure disrupted storylines and forced viewers to reinvest in new dynamics, creating fatigue rather than excitement. The introduction of Andromeda proved devastating. When Tribune Entertainment launched Gene Roddenberry's other posthumous series. Featuring Kevin Sorbo's star power and a larger budget, resources were systematically drained from Earth Final Conflict. Effects staff, writers, and crew members migrated to the flashier space opera, leaving Final Conflict with reduced budgets and diminished attention. By Season 4, the series was operating on less than half its original budget. By Season 5, that budget had shrunk to a quarter of the first season's resources. The final season's introduction of the vampire-like atavis felt like desperate scrambling rather than planned mythology, leading to unfortunate comparisons with the far more popular Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Critics who had initially praised the series began writing obituaries. The consensus emerged that Earth Final Conflict had squandered one of science fiction television's most intriguing premises through mismanagement and creative instability. What had begun as sophisticated political drama devolved into generic monster of the week television. The series concluded in May 2002, not canceled but simply exhausted. Final ratings were respectable but unremarkable. A far cry from the critical excitement that had greeted its premiere 5 years earlier. Earth Final Conflict had proven that even the most innovative concepts could be undermined by the very industry pressures they sought to critique. Legacy 15 years after its conclusion, Earth Final Conflict occupies a unique position in science fiction history, a series that somehow became more relevant and prescient with each passing year, despite being nearly destroyed by the very forces it depicted. The show's immediate legacy was transformational for syndicated science fiction. Earth Final Conflict proved that complex political allegory could work outside network television, paving the way for sophisticated genre programming that would flourish in the streaming era. The series demonstrated that audiences were hungry for morally ambiguous storytelling, stories where heroes could be wrong, villains could be sympathetic, and the greatest threats came disguised as salvation. Modern science fiction television owes an enormous debt to the show's pioneering approach. The moral complexity that defines series like Battlestar Galactica's reboot, The Expanse, and Westworld traces directly to Earth. Final Conflict's willingness to question everything. When Ronald D. Moore reimagined Battlestar Galactica, his exploration of occupation, collaboration, and resistance drew heavily from Final Conflict's template of humans struggling under benevolent tyranny. The show's prescience proved almost unsettling. Themes of surveillance, security versus freedom, and the gradual erosion of civil liberties through voluntary compliance became central to post-9/11 discourse. Earth Final Conflict's vision of aliens who conquered through gratitude rather than force suddenly felt like documentary rather than fiction. The Talon's promise of protection in exchange for freedom resonated powerfully with audiences experiencing similar trade-offs in their own societies. Academically, the series gained serious recognition as universities began teaching episodes as political science texts. Scholars analyzed the show's exploration of soft power, cultural imperialism, and the psychology of collaboration. The Talon occupation became a case study in how advanced civilizations might dominate less developed ones through dependency rather than conquest. The production itself became a cautionary tale that influenced how subsequent genre series were managed. The chaos surrounding cast departures and budget cuts served as a masterclass in how not to handle long-form storytelling. Showrunners learned from Final Conflict's mistakes, understanding that consistency and character development were essential for maintaining audience investment. Streaming platforms gave the series its most significant renaissance. New viewers discovering Earth Final Conflict through digital services approached it without the baggage of production disappointments, focusing instead on the ideas and themes that made early seasons brilliant. Many were shocked to discover how contemporary the show's concerns felt, particularly its exploration of how societies willingly surrender autonomy for convenience and security. The show that Gene Roddenberry conceived as Star Trek's Dark Mirror had become our mirror, reflecting uncomfortable truths about power, progress, and the price of paradise that remain as relevant today as they were revolutionary 2 decades ago. So, what do you think? Did Earth Final Conflict succeed in being the anti-Star Trek, or was it doomed by the very ambition that made it unique? Share your thoughts on this fascinating failure in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this exploration of science fiction's most troubled production, subscribe for more deep dives into the shows that dared to question everything we thought we knew about the future.